What is up, people? Welcome back to Unfiltered. Officially, this will go down as episode number 262 in your scorecards. You could jump on board the Unfiltered Revolution 24/7, 365. It is easy. Apple, Spotify, everywhere you get your podcasts. And of course, you could jump in, artist formerly known as Twitter, X, if you will, at Casey Stern. Give a follow, get up into the bio, and follow on board to the YouTube channel where you could view all the content, the interviews, the rants, the lists, and more. 261 now into 262 episodes deep into the podcast. Lots to talk about today on the baseball side, from Garrett Cole, what it means for the Yankees, what do they do next, and how about Dylan Cease on his way to the Padres? Speaking of Cole, now taking at least one of the names, the proposed names from Yankee fans, maybe not from Yankee management, we'll get into that could help in the starting pitching situation with the Yankees off the board. We are on the board as always, thanks in large part to our good friends at BetOnline, your number one source for your sports betting needs. They've got the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for baseball, basketball, boxing, golf, all the different sports and more. They continue to be the fastest and easiest way to get all your wagers, live betting, favorite casino, and card games. They're all available to play right now, right from your phone. So head over to the website, get on your mobile device today, and get in on all the action. Remember to use the promo code BELIEVE. It's BLEAV. It'll get you a 50% bonus on your welcome deposit. And we start here right now on Unfiltered, getting into the situation with the Yankees. We knew there was a problem when Aaron Boone had said opening day was very unlikely and Garrett Cole would get an MRI. And then we had tests for a couple of days. And yesterday, the reports came out that it seemingly is sort of good news, I guess, and some really bad news. That he might be able to avoid surgery on the elbow, but that it looks like he's shut down at least for a month or two, and a visit to Dr. Elatrosh, which already is in path to Los Angeles. We know that. Thank you, TMZ and other reporters trying to attack poor Garrett Cole at the airport if this news wasn't bad enough. And as if he can't be cranky enough, certainly this is not a situation where you want to be bombarded by reporters. As Garrett Cole now facing more conversations and more diagnoses to determine how long he'll be out. But we've got to say a couple of things. Number one, we don't know how long it's going to be. The idea that it's just going to be a month or two is, I mean, that's ridiculous because we have no clue. And then the other part is it's at least a month or two. And then when he comes back, what version is there? And is he going to feel more discomfort? And if they try to avoid surgery, does he have to have surgery? None of us have, the medical backgrounds to understand exactly what's going to happen. And we're not looking at Garrett Cole's elbow, but this is bad. And it's bad for a Yankee team that is under a ton of pressure this year to win. I said this yesterday, but this team is always under pressure to win because they're the Yankees. And that's how you want to talk about if George was still around, and that conversation always happens in New York and has now for many years. These aren't your Yankees that you grew up with. They're not the Yankees that I grew up with, where everybody in my family except me a Yankee fan, and all I had to deal with following the Mets was always watching the Mets never spend the amount of money, never go to that umpteenth level, never push that pedal down the way George would, the way the Yankees would, because they felt like they had to win. Well, this team has lost a lot. They've disappointed a lot. And there were people who, whether you think it's right or wrong, thought that Booney should go or thought that Brian Cashman should go. Both are still there. They had a lot of conversations and seemingly made a lot of statements about all they thought they could do this year. And then they backed it up with a huge deal, getting one of the best players on earth in Juan Soto, who has looked again like a world beater in spring training and heads into a season where he might take a Juan Soto monster year and take it to even another level heading into free agency. But you have no guarantee you have Juan Soto after this year. You have no guarantee that he's going to stay on your team. You've got the Mets in New York, among other teams, who are going to be in on him, giving him $500 million or whatever it's going to be to try and get him in play because of his age, where he is in his career, and just how dynamically good this guy is at the plate day in and day out throughout the course of a baseball season. If you're going to go get Juan Soto, and I love that deal, and you're going to make that trade, and you're going to say, hey, look, we are going after it. Prospects are cool. Parades are cooler, as I said years ago. If you're going to do all of that, you don't do that to then punt the season, and you don't do that to then say, well, we'll kind of play it as it lies. And reports seem to be that that's how the Yankees are going to handle this, that they're going to wait and see on Garrett Cole. They're not going to push the pedal. They're not going to jump in and dive in and acquiesce to Scott Boras on bringing a Jordan Montgomery back to the Yankees for some reunion, or bringing in Blake Snell, who seems to be the right fit, who seems to have interest, with an offer that's been hanging out there seemingly now forever and has been stagnant by all reports, including Mark Feinsand was on here on this podcast just a few days ago. So the question now becomes, if you're the Yankees, what should you do? Now, am I saying you should go out and now go give Blake Snell 7-8 years in a deal because Garrett Cole got hurt? I'm not saying that. It is never easy, and we never play the devil's advocate side and realize this is not something you just poof and out of thin air, okay, we'll just make the deal happen. The problem for me is I don't sense the urgency. The problem for me is I don't sense that all in, if you will, from the Yankees. The problem for me is that I don't know if they understand they have to win at a high level, and they have to keep Soto, and they have to do this now. They've been beaten time and time again in the postseason when they've gotten there and have looked awful and never been good enough and couldn't hit, and now they helped out the lineup, right? But this pitching staff has questions in it. We don't know what we're getting all year out of Nestor Cortez and how nasty or healthy it's going to be. And the same thing for Carlos Rodon. I like the Stroman move. All these things add great depth to a rotation that has a Garrett Cole at the front. But now you've got a serious scenario where he may not be at the front. Who knows? 1 month, 2 months, the All-Star break, the whole season. We don't know. This is an at least. He's not going to go to Dr. Elitrosh and all of a sudden, well, we thought it was a month or two, but now Garrett Cole coming back in 15 days. You know that's not going to happen. We all hope that's the case because you don't wish for anybody to get injured. But I think we all know that's not going to happen. I think we're all sitting there looking at it saying, well, this seems like one of those scenarios where there's a very good chance this could last the whole year. And you got to strike now. You are already in spring training. A couple of days ago when I had Jim Duquette on, I was talking to him, if you go back and listen to that pod, about a GM's perspective about how difficult it is because we don't think about this. For whatever you simulate and they're getting their bodies ready and all the things that agents and players say, it is difficult for players to get ready in the same exact way when they're not at camp, when they're doing it privately, than they would when they're doing it in your camp. Working with your catchers for the first time, going through, your routines for the first time, you learning them, the catchers and the staff and the pitching coach and everybody, understanding what makes them tick and how they work and what they need and what pitches they throw, all of that. You cannot simulate those sorts of things. So it is difficult when you're not in camp. And that's another thing that is an issue in all of this. That these guys first got to now get to a camp and then start to work their way in back to you, babe, on the field when we're sitting there now a couple of weeks away from the open of the season. The Yankees have got to push the pedal. They don't have a choice. Yeah, in a funnel, grand scheme of things, you sit there, do I want to overpay for Blake Snell? Am I concerned about the years and all that stuff? Sure you are. Do I want to do this with Montgomery? All of those things make a lot of sense. And I like to say all the time, my cousin Vinny, they hold water. But they don't hold water when desperate times are desperate measures. And that's what you have here. If you're the Yankees, you better be desperate to win. You're already in a division where the Orioles are better than you. The Jays might be better than you. You're not as good as Houston. You're not as good as Texas. And you're certainly not those things if you don't have Garrett Cole. You already had questions in the rotation and the depth of the rotation with Garrett Cole in it. And he's the best pitcher in the American League going right now. Your thoughts, comments, let me know along the way. Yankee fans, YouTube, pop on board on X or Twitter. Let me know in there as well. Speaking of best in the American League, Dylan Cease was the second best in the American League just a couple of years ago, down year last year, and now prospects going one way, and hopefully cooler things will prevail than what happened last season for the Padres as Dylan Cease enters a rotation now that lost a Blake Snell and still has a Musgrove and a Darvish and former Yankee, and that Soto deal Michael King, among others. Thorpe, who had gone originally, obviously Drew Thorpe in that deal from the Yankees, 60th overall, I think, in the top 100. And the number 4 Padres prospect in here as well, Jairo Uriarte, Sam Zavala. There are Steven Wilson. There are some names here, obviously, with Thorpe at the front, who looked terrific in spring training, by the way, and has nasty, nasty stuff. This is a really good deal, though, for the San Diego Padres because they still have a wealth of prospects. And what they also have is money that is not being shelled out with any concern because Dylan Cease is only due $8 million in 2024, and you still got him for another year. It's not a one-year deal. You got him for 2 years left on this contract, and even though he's coming off a bad year, or at least a subpar year from his standards, we know what he's capable of. We know how terrible the White Sox have been. We know how excited he's going to be for a scenario change, and he's looked great in spring training, and the stuff looks great and right on point for what Dylan Cease needs to be, and I think he's a Cy Young candidate right now, boom, immediately in the National League. That's how good this guy can be, and I think will be again. Now, the Padres, how good they're going to be, I have no idea. Do you? Please comment and let me know, because I can't ever figure them out. Is it going to be a redemption song from a year that was miserable, where they and the Mets were the story of money that just got in the sunken place? It didn't go anywhere a year ago. I think, everybody gets on A.J. Preller. Is not perfect. I think overrated in a lot of ways, but you have to be fair here. Look, went for it. I mean, went and got Dylan Cease. I mean, look, you make it. The Yankees need Dylan Cease more than the Padres because the Yankees got higher aspirations this year, seemingly, than the San Diego Padres. But the Padres make a deal to get Cease. You don't have to pay him a lot of money. The upside is huge. And I understand it's difficult, especially with Thorpe, a guy who you got in a deal for Soto, which was a tough deal to make if you're the Padres. I get that. And one where you're ripping off a Band-Aid to make it in the first place, and you like what Drew had done. This is, to me, a no-brainer and a deal that you had to do because you still got too many guys on this team that are sitting in win-now scenarios, and you can't be just worried if you're San Diego about winning in 4 or 5 years because they're just not situated that way. Are they going to be as good as the Dodgers? Clearly not. Can they be a playoff contender, especially with Dylan Cease? They can absolutely get into the playoffs. They can absolutely be a contender and be in the thick of things. And by the way, they didn't have to win the division a couple of years ago when they ended up going and getting this close. So, when it comes to the chances for October, this is clearly a big difference maker. If you're a White Sox fan, I mean, really, it's like, what did they say in Animal House? If you're old enough, of course, 21 or over, my advice would be to drink heavily because I really don't know any other good things that I could say to you or what advice to give you because being a White Sox fan, difficult. My son is his little league team. He's playing for the White Sox. I don't even want to tell him how bad the team is that he's repping the colors, although the jerseys are slick. I'm not. It was smaller lettering, of course, in the big league level than the actual lettering that the 9-year-olds wear, but that's a whole nother story. Dylan Cease to the Padres, a good move. What does it mean, though, now for Blake Snell, former Padre, for Jordan Montgomery? It has always seemed like, okay, well, Snell and the Yankees, they kind of been right there. Snell would like to go there, it seems. The money at least wasn't nearly good enough. The years weren't good enough. The offer was out there. It's stagnant. Will this make that move for Scott Boras and bring the Yankees closer? Jordan Montgomery, the Red Sox, who, I mean, I don't know what they're going to watch on Netflix. It may be more competitive to watch Jake Paul against Mike Tyson on Netflix than it's going to be to watch the competitive nature of the Red Sox on Netflix in this coming season. But Montgomery seemed to be all up in that, and we haven't seen anything happen with that either. So Monty's still there. Snell's still there. Some other free agents as well. Hit me up. Your comments and questions along the way. If you're a Yankee fan, are you with me that you got to be pushing that pedal down, and you cannot be waiting? You already need to be on that. Worst comes to worst, Cole comes back earlier, and you got Cole and Snell or Montgomery and Rodon and Stroman and so on and so forth, and Nestor Cortez. Well, great. Then you're even better suited to try and take on an Orioles team that, oh, by the way, has Corbin Burns now at the front of a rotation of a team that wiped you in the division a year ago without him. You can be with us all the time, and we appreciate your time on Unfiltered, as always, presented by our good friends